So let's start. Today we'll talk about status and role, and then we'll talk about social stratification. So this term we have already discussed multiple times or used multiple times. We'll just look into some detail. Status refers to the social position that a person occupies in the society. Okay. So society having a social structure, and social structure के लिए बहुत जरूरी है that there should be a status associated with the person and a role given to him as per the respective status. So the social state position that a person occupies in the society is called as the status, and role is the expected behavior with respect to social position. How a particular person occupying a particular status is supposed to behave or expected to behave in society. That is a role. So when we see status, it's of two types. First one is ascribed status. That is that social position that you get by birth. Okay. So for example, your caste is a social position that you get by birth. You don't choose the caste, you're born into a caste, or your tribal identity. Huh? No, it's an achieved position. Big man mein to one person becomes a big man. In certain cases, but usually it's an achieved position, right? So caste or tribe, or sometimes you can say, means in the present time it's very difficult because religion change ho sakta hai, but most of the time religion also is a ascribed status that you're born into a particular religion. Okay, then the other one is achieved status. This is the status which is chosen, not by birth but chosen, but as per the choice one decides. Okay, so this status usually is, say, your occupation. So you can become a doctor, you can become a lawyer, or whatever. So it's a chosen position in the society, and in a society that is relatively open where social stratification is mobility is there, so class usually is also a chosen position, provided you work for it. Means aapko agar high class mein jana, you work very hard, there is a mobility option. Okay, you can earn money, you can be called as a high class individual, okay, or low caste or middle class based on whatever work you do, what merit you possess, and based on talent and skills you can rise up and down. So that's the achieved position. Then here as per Ralph Linton, the earlier theory goes like in a society one status had a unique or a specific role that was attached to it. एक status का एक अपना role होगा. But what happened, R.K. Merton, he redefined this idea saying that with one status there can be multiple roles. Okay, for example, the role of a mother, okay, being at the status of mother, so she has a lot of roles, okay, to socialize the child, to feed the child, to do all the basic things that are related to child, means बहुत सारे काम बच्चों से related she has to do. Okay, so R.K. Merton suggests that a status might have multiple roles, and this role he calls as role sets. That is a set or combination of roles that are associated with a singular status. Okay, now living in a society we might have, or an individual might occupy multiple social position or multiple status. That is, I am a son, I am a brother, I am a husband, I am a student, I am a teacher. These are the status, means at the present time you are having the status of a student, but some people might be teaching also. So at that point of time they will be the teachers. You are a brother to someone, you are a sister to someone. Okay, so this is the multiple status that anybody in this society possesses. Now due to multiple status there will be multiple roles. Sometimes what happens that these roles might come into conflict, and this situation is called as role conflict. So for example, you are a student and you are a boyfriend. Okay, so you have a time that you need to read at night, or you can talk over phone अपनी girlfriend से. So in that case, if you choose either one of the status, you are in conflict with the other one. If you prefer to read, so then your girlfriend is going to ditch you, and if you prefer to talk to your girlfriend, anyway girlfriend will ditch you because you won't get selected into IAS. Okay, so that is what is called as the role conflict. Okay, so when multiple status there will be multiple roles, and when these roles are in conflict, that doing one role might affect the role of other status, that is called as role conflict. Yes, sexual orientation. हाँ, जेंडर को ascribe कहना थोड़ा गलत होगा. जेंडर mainly मतलब it's sometimes very difficult कि आप मतलब एक स्टेटस को यहाँ पे ascribe बोलो, achieve बोलो. I'll just look into it कि इसको क्या कहते हैं, exactly क्या कहेंगे. But it's very difficult to say कि ये by birth मिल रहा है या an individual is aspiring towards it. Another case is role strain. Here, as R.K. Merton suggested, that there can be multiple roles associated with the same status. In that case, a particular person might not be able to fulfill all the roles because of the lot of burden. Okay, because of a lot of burden, some role might get compromised. So, for example, being a mother, so she has to wake up the child, she has to prepare the breakfast, she has to iron the dress of the child, and then also help him in his homework, or maybe attend the parents teacher meeting. बहुत सारे काम है बच्चों के करने के लिए. And in that case, the roles are so much that the person supposed to perform that role gets overburdened. And in that case, she might not be able to perform all the roles with equal efficiency, and this is what is called as role strain. So role conflict means the conflict or the tension between roles of different status. Role strain means due to overburdening in the same status, means role related to same status, उसमें overburdening हो जाती है जिसकी वजह से all the roles are not being performed properly. Okay, so this is what is called as role strain and role conflict. Now the last topic, that is, which is very important, master status. So this master status means that status that is the center of orientation, means you have several status, but there can be one status that becomes the center of orientation of all other status that you possess. So for example, there is a person who is a lawyer or maybe a very prominent doctor. अब उसके घर वाले, उसके बाहर वाले, उसके जितने जानने वाले लोग हैं, वो हर जगह जाएगा तो he will be known as Dr. Saab. Okay, and even when he is talking to his relatives, so most of the time the relative will be talking to him with respect to health issues, or maybe suppose करो कि वकील है वो, तो उसका नाम ही हो गया वकील साहब, एवरीबडी विल बी रेफरिंग टू हिम इन द सेम वे, वकील साहब हैं, और वो हमेशा सब उसी कंटेक्स्ट में बात कर रहे होते हैं, तो समझ में नहीं आता कि वो अपने कोर्ट रूम में बैठा है या बेसिकली अपने फैमिली फंक्शन अटेंड कर रहा है. Are you getting this idea that this is the master status, that all the other statuses are oriented around it, and usually the occupation is one of the major or one of the most important master status. Okay, so just write this. Master status is the defining social position, a person holds to choose interactions or to relate self to others, A person's social identity influences person's role and behaviors in a societal context, and often shapes a person's entire life. For many people, occupations determine the basic status, and everything evolves around it. Sometimes physical disabilities serve as a master status to the point where person's entire life suffers from dehumanization, affecting the possibility of achieving any status. Okay, so today we'll start with social stratification, and this is very important topic, has been asked regularly. Har saal ek question is coming from social stratification. Social stratification, if we say, the word stratification is derived from the word strata. It's a geological term, strata, that means layers. Okay, when I'm saying stratification, so that means the population or human population will be divided into layers. Okay, so for example, if I might divide the entire class into two groups, boys and girls. Maybe I might divide it into multiple groups, maybe in bracket of age, maybe 21 to 25, and maybe something like this. So these are the layers by which or in which I will be dividing the class. But that is simply a stratification. But in terms of social stratification, the first step is to divide the class into layers or divide the population into layers, and the second step will be to impose inequality. That is to rank them. But still, it is not social stratification. Suppose if I divide the class on the basis of sex, that is boys versus girls, and then I put a ranking over them. That is, say boys are superior or girls are superior, either one. So in that case, that's the second step. However, it still is not called as social stratification. The third step will be to institutionalize the ranking. When institutionalization of ranking happens, so when I say institutionalization, that means we have talked about social institution, recurrent practices that are socially established, okay, that prescribes a well-defined way of doing things. So institutionalization of that inequality, that means it will be reproduced across generations. Okay, irrespective of the individuals who are part of that institution, that ranking still is there. So यहाँ पे individual की idea नहीं है, irrespective of whosoever is the part of the institution, irrespective of कितना talented है, उसके individual merits क्या है, doesn't matter. The rank still holds. So the ranking, you have to understand, it's not on the basis of individual's quality, but something that has already been well established. Okay, so that's why it will be reproduced across generations. So these are the three aspects of stratification: first, division, then inequality, and then institutionalization of that inequality, so that this inequality is reproduced, and it's independent of the individuals participating into it. That means आज कोई भी हो, कल कोई और भी होगा, तब भी यही ranking चलेगी. This is what is called as social stratification. And due to this institutionalization, this ranking seems normal to the people. You'll feel that ये ranking अगर है भी तो it's okay. What's the problem in it? And we get socialized due to it. So for example, living in patriarchal society, even the girls or women, they are also accustomed to this inequality. They believe that it's normal. There is no problem in it. Means they have adjusted or adapted so much to this inequality that they believe that yes, this is how the women are supposed to live, isn't it? And most of the things which the feminists might be highlighting might seem disruptive to us. हमें लग रहा होगा कि शायद इससे हमारी society disrupt हो जाएगी. Why? Because of institutionalization. We feel that this is the normal way of life. Okay, and this is what social stratification is. So if we see the characteristics, the first characteristic is universal but variable. Different type. So social stratification is universal, that is exists in all the societies, but a variable form. Different types will be there. So in some societies, caste-based stratification is there. In some societies, class-based will be there. In some societies, maybe gender-based might be there, or race-based might be there. Whatever be, but there will be some form of social stratification in all the known societies. That is universal but variable. Second, it's not related to individual differences, but it's a part of social structure. Okay, or it's a characteristic of society. That means irrespective of the individuals. Okay, this stratification does exist. अभी इंडिविजुअल के लेवल पे आप कुछ भी कर लो, मींस इफ यू आर born as a Dalit or अतिशूद्र or say untouchable, no matter how intellectual knowledge you have, that doesn't mean that you might be promoted to be a Brahmin, seeing that you have the practice to preach or you have the knowledge to preach. आप ज्ञान दे सकते हो, but still you will not be promoted to a Brahmin. You still, so for example, there are people, Bihar में community है, that is Musahar community, that is considered to be most, that is Mahadalit community कहते हैं इसको. Okay, I don't know the exact English word that is being used. So Mahadalit means even the ones who are at the lowest of the hierarchy when compared to the Dalits or untouchables also. So the term Musahar means the one who consume mice. Okay, and a person from Musahar community became interim CM of Bihar, that is Jitan Manji, right? But that doesn't mean कि वो chief minister बन गए तो उनको ब्राह्मण की तरह treat किया जा रहा है. Okay, he still belongs to the same community and will definitely be facing the same kind of discrimination as being faced by the Musahar community. हाँ ठीक है, थोड़ा सा mild होगा, but still ऐसा नहीं होगा कि that he might not be facing that discrimination. वो तो केआर नारायण के साथ भी हुआ था. And the same case happened with अपने रामनाथ कोविंद जी के साथ. Okay, बोध गया में he made a very petty excuse कि मेरी wife शायद सीढ़ी नहीं चढ़ पाएंगी and that's why he didn't enter. बोध गया वाले केस में, केआर नारायण वाले केस में हुआ था. And then MP of Karnataka, Kalburgi, that district is there, I don't remember exactly. शायद वहाँ के MP, he was Dalit, he entered into the temple and the entire temple was washed. So such kind of incidents do happen, very common. So that is, it's not related to individual differences, but it's a characteristic of the society as a whole. Third one, that it persists across generations. Since it's an institutionalized behavior, so it will persist for generations, or this inequality will be reproduced due to recurrent behavior associated with it. And the last one, there is a belief system associated with it. That is, it's not only economic or political differences that would lead to stratification, but a set of beliefs that are associated with it. So, for example, caste-based stratification or inequality or ranking of people, is it associated with economic differences or political differences as such? No, it's related to the idea of purity and pollution. Even in class also, that high class, low class. So the one how a high class interacts with the low class, it's not only that कि हमारे पास पैसा ज़्यादा है, उसके पास कम है, and with the belief that the other person might be able to earn some money someday and might attain the status of high class. No, it's not only the economic differences, but the high class believes that the courtesy, the way of life, the standard of living that I have, the food that I eat, the way I talk, these low class people can never think of it. They're not a product of, you can say, that breed नहीं है उनकी. Okay, so this belief system is something that creates stratification, not just the economic differences or political differences, which can be someday kind of equated. So these are the characteristics of social stratification. Just write a short note. Social stratification is a system by which society categorizes peoples. Society categorizes peoples and ranks them in hierarchy. Everything from social status and prestige, to kind of occupation one can hold, comma, to chances of living in poverty are affected by social stratification. It's a specific form of inequality. That is institutionalized and accepted normal. Okay. Now, the two basic types of social stratification are closed stratification and open stratification. So here in closed stratification, usually what happens is the status that a person holds is ascribed. आपको by birth ही मिल जाएगा. Okay. And most of the things that you that are responsible for stratification is something that is inherited rather than achieved. So ascribed, and then the mobility is not present or insignificant, and hence the system is rigid. So there is less chance that a person can actually change the position in the social structure. वो वहीं पे रहेगा. Okay. So that is ascribed and rigid with respect to mobility. Okay. So these are the two features. So let's see the example of closed social stratification. The first one is caste. Second one is the estate system. So in caste, basically the position that you have in the society is usually by birth. Okay, you get a position, you inherit the caste of your parents, and through endogamy, that is, the person in a particular caste will marry in his own group. The caste stratification is maintained, and that's why if there is intercaste marriage or it is being promoted, in that case caste system will lose its significance. It's this factor only, that is endogamy, that is responsible for maintenance of caste system. इसलिए लोहिया, Ram Manohar Lohia, when he gave certain speeches in Bihar की caste के against में, या फिर Ambedkar when he gave speeches or that speech annihilation of caste, there he says that the first and the foremost factor, endogamy, should be prohibited. Okay, just end endogamy and the caste will automatically erode. So Lohiya's statement, that is roti beti ka nata tod do, this very famous part of his speech, roti, that is related to commensality, that people of different castes should start eating together, common dining should be happening, and beti, that is they should start exchanging women across caste. Intercaste marriages should happen. There is a scheme also, Dr. Ambedkar's scheme for intercaste marriage, wherein if you go for intercaste marriage, the government pays you approximately 2.5 lakhs. So this scheme, if you have some person in mind, so keep this in mind, you at least will get some money. Okay. So अरे मतलब इतनी फ्यूचर प्लानिंग कौन करता है शादी से पहले कि शादी हुई नहीं डिवोर्स के बारे में पहले सोचो तब तो लॉ ऑप्शन लेना चाहिए तुमको वुड हैव हेल्प यू so yes caste is maintained by endogamy and there is lack of mobility there or although there is mobility we'll talk about the kind of mobility that is there in the caste system social mobility but that's a different aspect theoretically speaking caste system lacks mobility ideal case mein okay but reality mein ground level pe we see the caste system does have mobility and we'll be seeing that in paper 2 but ideal case mein it's a closed system then the second case is the estate system so here in estate the first thing that we see here that the society ye France ka jo system tha administrative system the society was divided into three categories nobility clergy and commoners and all three categories were inherited nobility ka beta nobility mein jayega clergy ka beta clergy mein jayega and commoners will be commoners and commoners were the one who were supposed to pay the taxes while nobility and clergy were exempted from taxation system and jiske against mein entire French revolution happened okay so this was also a kind of closed stratification wherein there was no mobility and the status was ascribed in nature then comes the open stratification which theoretically speaking is dependent on achieved status and it is flexible in nature so mobility is present so the best example is class system that is class system of stratification that is based on your wealth okay so it is believed that this open system institutionalized meritocracy open system institutionalized meritocracy अब ये कैसे हुआ so it's believed that since it's open anybody can rise up in the hierarchy based on the talent if you have the talent if you have the skill the society will respect it they will give you the money you will be able to earn the wealth and you will be able to rise so meritocracy has been institutionalized in open system that is believed but this same thing that is meritocracy also makes people believe that the one who is poor lacks the merit okay ये poverty को भी justify करने लगे are you getting this idea the same idea of meritocracy which made people believe that if you have the talent you can rise up made people believe that if somebody is at the bottommost level in the hierarchy that means that particular person lacks merit उसके पास talent ही नहीं होगा उसके पास skills ही नहीं होंगे that's why he was not able to rise up in the ladder and that's why he is suffering from poverty okay but here in class system you will find that you'll find that this the idea that ये achieved है ऐसा नहीं है means suppose करो if a middle class boy or say upper middle class boy living in Delhi wants to go to US for further studies or for research and a boy who is from the lower class belonging to a farmer's house or a peasant's house want to basically go to US for research work wants to study in US ज़्यादा intelligent है गांव वाला बच्चा बहुत intelligent है very sharp okay and then there is a boy in the urban area Delhi का है very average whose probability is high that he will be going to US for research definitely the answer is without any doubt the boy living in Delhi who is belonging to upper middle class or upper class family को belong करता है because his family can afford all the means okay so कहने के लिए it's achieved status but definitely there are certain people who because of their ancestral property they have got some unfair advantage already okay so Mukesh Ambani के बेटे he is born into high class he has not achieved high class but he is already born into that high class and that's the initial advantage or the initial kickstart that a person starts with creates a gap that is very difficult to cover okay so a person starting from zero and then a person starting from the west that makes him the second or third largest richest person in India उनके बीच में already बहुत ज़्यादा gap है so it's very difficult that the person who is starting from zero will ever be able to reach that level so although it says that it works on meritocracy and open system is there complete fluidity or mobility is there it in reality does not exist okay and in open type of stratification one thing that is functional is what is called as glass ceiling effect what is this glass ceiling effect that there is a transparent ceiling above your head it seems that you can rise at whatever level you want but that transparent ceiling will prevent your further growth but beyond a certain level it's impossible to grow आप grow करोगे but up to a certain level beyond which there will not be any growth so you might start from lower class you might get educated you might be able to get a job in Reliance you might be promoted as a CEO एक point of time but there is a limit even working for 35 years 40 years for the same company you will never be able to own even 1% of the total wealth that the company owner is having isn't it that is the glass ceiling effect that works that beyond a certain limit it's impossible to grow no matter आपके पास कितनी भी merit हो you might be more intelligent more entrepreneurial than the owner of the company but the owner of the company takes the larger share or larger part of the pie okay so this is what happens one other thing that happens in the open system of stratification is what is called as status inconsistency what is this status inconsistency that is the kind of incompatibility that happens between multiple status or multiple social positions that an individual holds in an open stratification that is for example let's take the case of a teacher who is a PhD holder very highly educated okay so based on the occupational prestige his status will be high or low the kind of job that he's doing definitely is a respected job being a teacher college का teacher है professor है occupational prestige definitely high somebody was saying low ठीक है second one occupational prestige के बाद that is educational prestige what's his educational prestige high or low the third one is income will it be high or low definitely low high तो नहीं होती यार ठीक है so that is very low 35 साल पीएचडी 30-35 साल पीएचडी करने के बाद आपको कुछ एक बहुत पीनट से मिलते हैं, उससे बढ़िया आप कोई अपना बिजनेस कर लेते हैं। 35 साल आपने जितना पैसा खर्च किया उतना एसआईपी कर लेते, उससे ज्यादा तो इंटरेस्ट मिलता है आपको पर मंथ का। बट दिस इज व्हाट इज कॉल्ड एज स्टेटस inconsistency. That is the incompatibility between different kinds of position, means based on education and the job that a person holds, he is having a very high status. But when compared to or when seen from the point of view of the salary or the income that he withdraws, that's a very low amount of money. So that is what is called as status inconsistency, and that is very common in open form of stratification. Very common. In fact, I asked one of my friends, so he's working in Adani Wilmar. Okay, so मेरे साथ में था कॉलेज में, तो he was posted in Adani Wilmar. He currently is affluent, the waste disposal वाला section होता है, he is the AVP of Adani Wilmar All India. In fact, वियतनाम में और 2-3 जगह पे उसने पूरा Adani Wilmar का वाला section सेटअप कराया है. So I thought he assistant vice president है and he might be earning $1 million, something like this. And I asked him, भाई कि क्या पैकेज है तेरा? तो फिर उसके बाद you can understand, पूरे दुख सुना दिया भाई ने कि being an assistant vice president कहने की बात है, but the kind of package is not more than say even 1 lakh भी नहीं है उसके महीने का. And this is what is status inconsistency. We thought like assistant vice president, something like this. And आपके साथ भी ऐसा ही होने वाला है. Okay, that is what you are going to face. कि आप IAS हो IPS हो, but if you are honest, that is, so then your salary definitely is very low. ठीक है, इसीलिए तो corruption है. And this is status inconsistency. So here what I want to say कि if we see open stratification and also closed, none of the stratification is completely open. And at the same time, none of them is completely closed. There is some form of ascribed status or a lot of ascribed status in open stratification also. That is, class are being inherited here. Ambani ka beta is not achieving his class, but rather inheriting a lot of wealth from his father. So here it's not achieved status. Okay, and a class system also has some form of mobility. So none of the system is completely closed and none is completely open. So there is some kind of achieved status in closed system and some form of ascribed status in open system of stratification. Is it clear? That's right. Stratification is classified into two types: closed and open. Closed stratification depends on ascribed status and is extremely rigid with little or no social mobility. For example, caste system, race and estates. Next, open stratification is dependent on achieved status, and allows for much more social mobility. For example, class system. Open system is usually based on elements of meritocracy. But idea of meritocracy in itself becomes a justification for inequality. It promotes a belief that anyone who is not upwardly mobile lacks merit or talent. Next point: because meritocratic class system is supposed to be open, it is easy to ignore structural factors. That influences one's status. Just like caste system, class system also limits how far hard work can take some people. In bracket you can write glass ceiling effect. Class system tends to reproduce inequalities because of the advantages one starts with. Next point: openness also leads to status inconsistency. Hyphen, a situation where a person's social position has both positive and negative influence, has both positive and negative influence on social status. On social status. Okay. Now, beginning of social stratification. So it is believed that social stratification is relatively a very recent phenomenon that might have emerged very recently, means not thousands of years back, means millions of years back, but something that has happened specifically when agriculture would have started. Okay, or maybe even after that. How we can say this? Because of the archaeological evidences that we got. So archaeological evidences that we have got before the time agriculture started did not depicted any kind of inequality. But post agriculture, beginning of agriculture, the archaeological evidences that we got clearly depicted some kind of inequality. अब इससे कैसे आपको पता चलेगा archaeological evidences से? So first evidence that we got post agriculture was size of burial pits. So greater the size of burial pit, the means you can say that the person was of high status in the society, might be very important. Or sometimes they erect a very big stone in tribute of that person, that is megaliths. So larger the size of that megalith, okay, greater will be the, or it's assumed that the greater will be the status. So जैसे कि हम लोग नॉर्मल लोग की डेथ हो जाएगी, so normal funeral will happen and nothing will happen after that. Okay, but गांधी जी की डेथ हुई, so then there is a proper राजघाट बन गया वहाँ पे. Okay, ऐसे बहुत सारे important लोग जब, तो there will be established the memorials. In the same way in the past also, these kind of megaliths were created. Okay, as a tribute to the person. And now you can understand that it was a kind of social stratification that was institutionalized because that person हो सकता है कि if the adult was there, so that person might have achieved some status. But what would have, there have been several pits, burial pits of children in which the grave goods suggested that these children were richer than others. क्योंकि children तो कुछ achieve नहीं कर पाए होंगे, maybe 2 or 3 years old. What would have they achieved? But their grave goods are of greater quality as compared to the grave goods of other persons nearby. In some cases, you might also find that there is a mass burial versus a single grave, means single room versus a shared room. So you must have seen कि like आपके hostels में जो बड़े बाप की औलाद है वो single room होते थे. And then there was somebody जो shared room लेके आते थे. 3-4 रूम में पूरा रूम था कि डॉर्मेटरी था, समझ नहीं आता था. So this is the same kind of burials you will find there in the past as well. Okay, so and moreover by bones also we were able to determine that there was some kind of inequality wherein certain people their bone had some kind of nutritional deficiencies. Okay, compared to the neighboring people in the same area जहाँ पे burial pits मिले, so that was found that nutritional deficiencies नहीं है. So that means there was some kind of nutritional kind of imbalance or some malnutrition might be prevalent among the poor people. So ये हम लोग को पता चला कि that approximately 8,000 years ago that this kind of burial pits were kind of discovered. On the basis of which we conclude that the social stratification is a very recent phenomenon. Now based on this, when we say that it's a recent phenomenon that has emerged very recently, what would have been the reason for this stratification to emerge? So Sahalin says that level of productivity is directly proportional to level of stratification. The greater the productivity, the greater will be the degree of stratification. That means जितना ज़्यादा surplus होगा, उतनी ज़्यादा chances हैं कि the stratification will be more intense. Okay, surplus. So he says when there will be rise in production, there will be surplus. That would lead to distinction between distributor and the producer. One who will be producing and the other who will be distributing it. And the one who is responsible for distribution of the produce will have some control over the producer. And he will be determining the allocation of resources. He says that, for example, there are n number of people who are producing wheat. Okay, and all of them are producing more than what they actually require. In that case, they need a distributor who will be distributing that surplus wheat for some other goods, maybe exchange karega. Okay, so that distributor, when this distinction starts to happen between distribution and production, what actually would happen? That the distributor will start exerting some kind of control over the producer. In that scenario, the distributor starts controlling over some resources or natural resources. Moreover, can also command the producer to produce what and when and how to produce. Means production को पूरा का पूरा control करना शुरू करेगा. Okay, and that would lead to rise of stratification. Just like this. Beginning of social stratification. Stratification is a recent phenomenon. It's a recent phenomenon. Archaeological sites dating before 8,000 years ago, do not show extensive evidence of inequality. Houses do not appear to vary much in size or context. Signs of inequality. Signs of inequality appear first in Middle East, somewhere about 8,000 years ago. We had evidences of burial sites of different sizes. Moreover, the grave goods also demonstrated class differences. Grave good also demonstrated class differences. Next point. Another indication of recent development of stratification is that most society that depend on agriculture, most societies that depend on agriculture have social classes. Next point. On the basis of his study of Polynesian societies, Marshall Sahlins, on the basis of his study of Polynesian society, Marshall Sahlins suggested that increase in agricultural productivity resulted in social stratification. Higher the productivity, the greater will be the surplus. Which in turn leads to greater scope and complexity of distribution system. The differentiation between distributor and producer gives rise to differentiation in other aspects of life. The distributor tends to exert some control or some authority over production. This makes the distributor gain some eminent property rights and differences in social power. So here he's trying to say that the redistributor jo hoga, that will be redistributing and the surplus and might be gaining some kind of prestige. So here he says that the surplus will lead to stratification. But later on, he just rejected this idea himself. He says that it's not status or surplus will lead to stratification, but opposite might also be true. That stratification might lead to surplus. That is, there might be somebody who might be appointed as the chief or the head of the community, and he, in order to enhance his status, wants to redistribute more. He might persuade or kind of motivate his followers to produce more so that he can redistribute more, and that would have created the condition for surplus. So both the ways, surplus might lead to stratification. Later on, shifted to stratification leads to surplus. There is a scholar, Gerard Lenski. He also believes that surplus is the reason for stratification, but he says that it was not voluntarily that stratification came. But when there was surplus, there was a conflict between people to control surplus. That surplus to hai, but control kaun karega? Who will be owning the maximum part of it? And in that conflict, the person with the greatest physical strength was able to proclaim his authority. Jiske paas sabse zyada strength, he will be controlling the surplus and he will be rising up in the hierarchy. So here he is just countering Sahlins' idea that stratification was not achieved peacefully or not by voluntary agreement of the people in the society, but rather by conflict, or by use of physical force, just like this Gerard Lenski. According to Lenski, surplus is the stimulus to development of stratification. But he focused on conflict that arises. With respect to control of surplus. Inequalities in power, in bracket physical power, promoted unequal access to resource, which led to inequalities in privilege and prestige. Okay. Now one question comes, that why in the very first place there was a desire of wealth? I agree that surplus would have led to stratification, but these people who were hunter-gatherers were not having any kind of surplus. So what happened when the surplus came? That they started having that desire to control that wealth. That was not there, right? Means when they were hunter-gatherers, so there was no desire to control or possess extra. The society was egalitarian. But what suddenly happened is that there was a desire, there was a competition that started to accumulate surplus. Any guess? Feeling of? Sorry? Fear of insecurity in what sense? You're right actually. They have started suddenly like so. कोई लूट लेगा, कुछ होगा तब ना लूटेगा भाई. वेल तो सरप्लस के बाद आएगी ना. हाँ, मे बी स्टेटस तो जब आएगा तब सरप्लस की जरूरत है. नहीं मींस ये सब की जरूरत क्यों पड़ी? इनिशियल दे वर लिविंग हंटर गैदरर्स लाइफ ना, देयर वाज नो स्टेटस, नथिंग बॉदर्ड देम कि स्टेटस चाहिए, प्रिविलेज चाहिए, रैंक चाहिए और सरप्लस चाहिए, नॉट एट ऑल डिजायर्ड. बट व्हाई नाउ? Insecurity is the reason definitely, but the reason for insecurity is sedentary lifestyle. Okay, earlier they were nomads, and in nomadic lifestyle, whenever they had some kind of difference, they can move, partition in the group, move in other directions, and occupy some different territory. This is not possible now, right? Agriculture kar rahe, they have invested time and effort on certain land. If there is some kind of conflict, they cannot leave that land and go away. So if they have to live there, they have to stay protected in a particular place. In that case, they will have to say pay or pay some kind of money or pay kind of some surplus, whatever in whatever form they have, to somebody who is physically powerful, who can or who assures them some kind of protection against others. And that created desire to have something more than what they actually need. That security wala concern created a desire to own more than what they need, and more they have it, the greater is the chance that they are secure because they can easily pay it off. They can pay somebody to work for them, or maybe somebody who is at the top of the power, physical power, might be working for them for some amount of grains, and this would have created a sense of security in them, that desire to have more and more, that it will pay for their security. Okay, moreover it is also said that it's the climate that might also have created a desire for surplus, that famines might happen, or there might be, actually when we shifted towards agriculture, it is believed that that was a phase of climate change. We have shifted when transition from Paleolithic to Mesolithic and Neolithic happened. There was decline of ice age. Okay, and due to when the ice age started to end, several forests and several bigger animals which were conditioned to live in cold places, they also become extinct. So hunting के लिए बड़े animals थे ही नहीं. They were replaced by smaller animals, and the vegetation was replaced by grasslands. Okay, so this created some kind of insecurity among the people. ऐसे तो क्या एक दिन एक आदमी एक जानवर को मार दिया, 3-4 दिन के लिए आराम से रेस्ट हो गया. But now smaller animals and grasslands, so they actually might have suffered from shortage of food for that transitional period because they were not skilled enough to exploit that resources. Okay, and that's why that would have created the desire to accumulate more. कि कभी भी famine आ सकता है, or shortage of food might happen, and that would help them or survive in that case. Okay, just write this. Write the heading: why surplus created the desire for wealth, or why would societies want to accumulate? Right? Initially, during the hunting gathering lifestyle, people had the power to vote with their feet. To vote with their feet. That means they can move away. Vote with their feet. By moving away from leaders they do not like. By moving away from leaders they do not like. However, after agriculture was discovered, large investment of time and effort on land started. People would tend to accumulate more resources in exchange for protection. Another idea is the rise of or population pressure. It is believed that when the sedentary lifestyle started, we had higher population pressure. The fertility rate increased significantly, population pressure increased, and that motivated the redistributor to accumulate more and more resources for his family members. Because population pressure was very high, in that case there was a tendency to accumulate more. Okay, and this was actually demonstrated by a study done by C.W. Meek in northern Nigeria, when he found that initially there was a chief, and chief used to control all the land. Okay, chief was believed to be the owner of all the land, and anybody who wanted to cultivate a land has to give some token gift to chief. Token gift means it's a symbolic form of gift, not some kind of money or something like that. हो सकता है that person might make a painting or might make a very beautiful pottery and might gift it to the chief, and that chief might allow him to cultivate land at some place or might allot some kind of land to that person. So ultimate ownership of all the land belongs to the chief. But as the population pressure started to increase in that area, so here people, in order to survive, they started paying the chief in some kind of money, and जैसे population pressure और बढ़ता जा रहा था, the chief was paid heavily. So that token gift was replaced by some form of money or some kind of precious objects that can be sold in the market. So एक तरीके से it was not an ordinary transfer of land that was happening before, but it was like chief engaging into selling of land. Are you getting this idea? So this is because of population pressure that the resource accumulation wali tendency might have started. Okay, just write this. Another suggestion is that the access to resources became unequal when there was high population pressure. It induced the redistributors to keep more land for themselves and their families. In a study done by यहाँ पे C.K. Meek in northern Nigeria, study done by CK Meek in northern Nigeria. Demonstration of impact of population pressure on economic stratification was given. On economic stratification was given. Initially, the tribal members could obtain. Initially, the tribal members could obtain right to use land by asking permission of the chief. Right to use land by asking permission of the chief, and a token gift totem. Sorry, a token gift item. And a token gift item. However, due to rise in population, the members started paying high amount to chief. This led to rise of private property. And differential access to property became institutionalized. Now we'll see theories of social stratification. So there are 4 major types of theories related to social stratification. The first one is functionalist theory. We'll be seeing 2 theories here. The theory by Talcott-Parsons, then Davis-Moore hypothesis, then the second theory by Marxist theory of stratification, then Max Weber's theory of stratification, and finally symbolic interactionism. So these 4 theories we'll be reading. Okay, so let's talk about the first one, that is the functionalist theory of stratification. As the name suggests, it says that stratification is positively functional for the society. Okay, positively functional means it helps maintain the society. So social stratification is necessary for the society too, and that is how the structure of the society is maintained. Okay, so let's first talk about the theory of Talcott-Parsons. So he talks about an idea that is value consensus in the society. He says that there will be, every society has value consensus. Value consensus means hierarchy of values, and there means all the values are placed in a hierarchical position and society agrees upon it. That is on the value consensus. So for example, in a patriarchal society, aggression, courage, strength, all the masculine values, they are placed over and above the feminine values like care, love, kindness. So this is कौन सी value कहाँ पे put की गई है? There is a consensus regarding it. Okay, there is a value consensus, and society desires conformity to the consensus. Okay, that as the values are placed, everybody should believe in this hierarchy. That everybody should believe that courage, desire, strength, aggression, physical strength, all are superior values than care, love, and kindness. Okay, and society rewards conformity. The greater you conform to this value consensus, the greater reward will be given to you. And inequality of this reward leads to stratification. Some people get greater reward, some people get lesser reward, and this inequality in the reward leads to stratification. Now he also says that people usually choose or align themselves as per the value. Basically, suppose करो कि in our society, administration jobs are considered to be superior than any kind of private job. Okay, the person, if he leaves job in Microsoft or Google and becomes a sub inspector in say UP and Bihar, their parents will be more happy, right? कि उसे सरकारी नौकरी लग गई. So this is the value consensus, and that's why if the person conforms to it, so he chooses a particular job as per his acumen, he goes for it, he applies, and he gets selected, based on which he will be rewarded by the society, and that will change or that will decide his rank in the society. So greater the reward, greater will be the rank, and people choose as per their own capabilities. मतलब उनको लगता है कि so there might be some person who might be choosing UPSC, there might be some person who in the very first means just after graduation they chose SSC. Okay, SSC की prepare करना. कुछ लोग बैंक पीओ की तैयारी कर रहे हैं. They don't even desire for UPSC because they believe that is beyond their capabilities. So based on their capabilities, individual capabilities, you will decide what values do you conform with, and based on that you try to achieve, or आप उसके लिए try करने लग जाते हो, society rewards you, and that will decide the rank of the individual in the society. So there is a value consensus. Society desires conformity, and this conformity will get you the reward. Inequality in reward will lead to ranking in the society. Just write this. According to Parsons, society developed value consensus. Society developed value consensus to develop stratification. To develop stratification, society desires conformity to the norms or value consensus. it rewards conformity. It rewards conformity. Stratas are made according to rewards. Stratas are made according to rewards. Inequality of rewards leads to stratification. Inequality of rewards leads to stratification. Next paragraph. People have different capabilities. People have different capabilities, and hence they evaluate themselves. Hence they evaluate themselves in terms of their ability. In terms of their ability to conform to these norms. To conform to these norms. Thereby assuring themselves that they have been given a position according to their ability. That they have been given a position according to their ability. Okay, so value consensus के हिसाब से you decide what value do you possess, based on which society will reward you. You will believe that okay, I was possessing this value and society gave me the reward according to it, and this is my position in the society. So that inequality of reward will be the reason for stratification. Okay, does it sound logical to you? Value consensus कि आपकी जो value है आप उस हिसाब से affirm करके society आपको reward करती है. Yes, this is the problem. This is the criticism that it cannot explain gender-based stratification in the society. Okay, and this cannot also explain caste-based stratification in the society. So it is talking about an utopian society in which there is complete openness, complete mobility is possible. So anybody can apply for any job. There is no ascriptive membership at all that is available. और आप ठीक है सोसाइटी में एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव जॉब और से जॉब ऑफ पायलट और से जॉब ऑफ मिलिट्री मैन इज वैल्यूड agreed, but do all have the equal opportunity to apply to it, or are there any structural factors that is promoting and prohibiting some individuals to apply for those jobs? So society definitely appreciates UPSC preparation, but do all have that equal opportunity to prepare for UPSC? No. So this means that this idea of stratification that was given by Target Parson talks about a utopian society in which there is no structural barriers to mobility, and that's why it cannot explain any kind of stratification related to caste, any kind of stratification related to gender, because these are based on ascriptive characteristics and there are a lot of obstacles or structural barriers that are applicable on certain individuals that they will never be able to rise or never be able to achieve their aspirations or their aspired status. Despite the criticism, Parson's theory is applicable where opportunities are equal and stratification is open. ठीक है. According to Parson, stratification is functional. But it is divisive as well, or dysfunctional as well. Functional but dysfunctional as well. The second theory is one of the most preferred theory, that is Davis-Moore hypothesis. So Davis-Moore says that the greater the functional importance of a job, greater will be the reward attached to it. ठीक है. Means any job which is functionally more important in the society will attach greater reward to it. And why this greater reward? So they say that there are only few individuals in the society who have talent for functionally important job. Only few individuals are there who have talent for functionally important job, and this, in order to convert this talent into skill, they have to undergo a very regressive training, ठीक है, wherein they will have to do a lot of sacrifices during this training in order to convert this talent into skill. ठीक है, they have to undergo a lot of sacrifices, and a lot of sacrifices for what? To do that functionally important job. So in this case, the functionally important job must have some disproportionate prestige and rewards attached to it. Why? In order to motivate the talented people to undergo that kind of sacrifice. नहीं तो अगर disproportionate prestige or rewards are not there, then why would these people who are talented will be motivated to undergo that sacrifice? So let's take the case of UPSC. You guys are struggling so hard. You have sacrificed your social life. Facebook कुछ लोगों ने delete कर दिया होगा. Some people are not having WhatsApp. They are not talking to friends. Social life is all gone. Right? You are studying for 10 to 12 hours. Some people might be thinking कि पूरी जिंदगी में जितना नहीं पढ़ा उतना एक साल में पढ़ लिया. So this kind of sacrifice that you are undergoing. Now if you get a job which like gives you no authority, means clerical job है, वहाँ पे कोई extra power ही नहीं है. So will anybody tell me will be preparing so hard? No. So this training that you are undergoing for 10 to 12 hours of study and extra hard work, all that sacrifices that you are undergoing, it's because of the disproportionate prestige and rewards that will be given to you once you qualify the exam, and that is kind of motivating you guys to undergo that kind of sacrifices. And these jobs like IAS, IPS, foreign service, these are so important for the nation to survive. Okay, these are very much functionally important jobs. So in that case, the theory seems to be correct, isn't it? Functionally important jobs require a lot of sacrifice for the talented individual in order to convert their talent into skills. And in order to undergo that sacrifice, the jobs definitely must provide them some kind of disproportionate assets or rewards. Okay, so ये theory तो सही लग रही है? अरे हाँ या ना? Seems logical, हाँ? क्या? अरे इतनी शांति से उसी के कान में बोल दो फिर, नहीं तो तेज बोलो यार। जेंडर का कैसे नहीं है? हाँ तो ठीक है, if a particular sex can perform the job of masculine characters, so they will definitely। अब आप इस तरीके से देखो, I have already talked about this कि men were more expendables than women, isn't it? क्योंकि men, अगर men मर जाते तो still the entire group can continue because one single man can impregnate all the women, but if women die, in that case one woman will not be able to bear say 10 children, so men were more expendables, and in that case men were the ones who were engaging into all such kind of jobs that involve the risk of life and death। okay, अब वहाँ पे men will be going for hunting, in that case society should pay them something। अब उस केस में पैसा तो था नहीं, तो they started paying them in the form of prestige, rewards, higher status, more respect, ranks, isn't it? So this is the idea of Davis Moore, but there is a scholar, Melvin Cumin. He says that not all the jobs which are functionally important are highly paid. First, so for example, the jobs which are functionally important are highly paid. First, so for example, the जो कूड़ा उठाने आता है आपके यहाँ पे, that job is functionally important or not? The rag picker. So the rag picker, if they sit on a strike for say 1 month, the entire ORM, the population that it caters, will turn into a landfill site. Okay, 7 days or 1 month. But how much salary does he get? So he says that not all functionally important jobs, first, do not require high skills and are not paid or not highly paid. That means रैग पिकिंग के लिए आपको कोई बहुत ज़्यादा स्किल्स की भी जरूरत नहीं है, नॉट, और या फिर ऐसा कोई कंपटीशन भी नहीं चल रहा उसमें। एंड सेकंड, दे आर नॉट हाईली पेड आल्सो। एंड सेकंड आइडिया, नॉट ऑल हाईली पेड जॉब्स आर फंक्शनली इंपॉर्टेंट। दैट इज द जॉब ऑफ एन एक्टर, से शाहरुख खान टेकिंग 60 करोड़ 100 करोड़ फॉर वन मूवी, अक्षय कुमार टेकिंग से 100 करोड़ के आसपास एक मूवी के लिए, मूवी कैसे बना रहा है पृथ्वीराज जैसी, ओके, पूरी हिस्ट्री गलत बता दी भाई ने। सो दैट इज इट ए फंक्शनली इंपॉर्टेंट जॉब, बट वन ऑफ द मोस्ट हाईएस्ट पेड काइंड ऑफ जॉब। So this is what Melvin Cumin is saying, that not all functionally important jobs they require high skills or are highly paid, and not all highly paid jobs are even functionally important in society. Moreover, he says that according to this idea of Davis Moore, social stratification, basically, he says that this social stratification will work opposite of what he is saying, that people with high skill should be promoted more or should have more equal chances or greater chances to acquire the position of functionally important job. So let's take the case of again the rural youth who is skilled enough, who is talented enough, who can become a scientist in ISRO, ठीक है, उसके पास पूरा स्किल है और टैलेंट है, इंटेलिजेंस है, रैशनैलिटी है, सब कुछ है, आईक्यू भी है। एंड देन देयर इज अ एवरेज गाय इन दिल्ली फ्रॉम अ वेरी say high middle class or upper middle class who also wants to enter into ISRO, wants to become a space scientist, whose probability is more, Delhi wala, compared to the one who is living in village, although he might be having the talent, might be intelligent, but less chance that he will enter into ISRO. So stratification से ये नहीं हो पाएगा। What Davis Moore was saying, that all that functionally important job, in order to attract the people with the skills, will have to pay them some disproportionate rewards. But it is due to this stratification only that the skilled people or the talented people will not be able to enter into that functionally important job. Are you getting this idea? So this is the criticism. Okay, that's right. क्या हुआ? मेरिट से कैसे सब आप बताओ कि उसको बेसिक एजुकेशन ही नहीं मिलेगी वहाँ पे। हाँ, टैलेंटेड है, इंटेलिजेंट है, ऐसे कई सारे टैलेंटेड और इंटेलिजेंट यूथ अपनी पोटेंशियल को कभी यूटिलाइज नहीं कर पाते बिकॉज़ दे डिड नॉट गेट इवन द बेसिक एजुकेशन। तो बहुत सारे लेबर्स हैं मार्केट में जो घूम रहे हैं, वो जो बोरट होते हैं या फिर ईंट वगैरह लेके जाते हैं, कंस्ट्रक्शन वर्कर्स हैं, फ्रॉम द वेरी फर्स्ट मींस द डे दे वर एबल टू स्टैंड, वो उन्होंने कभी स्कूल का मुंह ही नहीं देखा है। 5-6 साल से दे आर वर्किंग एज मैनुअल लेबर्स और 7-8 इयर्स फर्स्ट एज डोमेस्टिक हेल्प एंड देन लेटर ऐसे कंस्ट्रक्शन और ये सब साइट पे काम करते हैं। हाउ डू यू नो कि दे वर नॉट इंटेलिजेंट? पहले तो स्कूल में उनको ट्रेन किया जाता तब तो पता चलता, बट इट्स बिकॉज़ ऑफ दिस सर्टिफिकेशन ओनली दे डिड नॉट इवन गेट द चांस टू सी द फेस ऑफ स्कूल आल्सो। So the opposite happened. As per Davis Moore, it was to attract the talented people, but what actually happened? The talented people were deprived of due to stratification. They were deprived from this functionally important job. Right? According to Davis Moore hypothesis, greater the functional importance of a social role, greater must be the reward. A society assigns greater economic or social rewards. Society assigns greater economic or social rewards to those jobs that are more important to society. Without unequal rewards, only a few people will want the job that requires years of training or personal sacrifice. years of training or personal sacrifice. For example, a firefighter's job, is more important in a metropolitan city. In a metropolitan city, it requires more skill or talent. Hence, society assigns a greater reward. Hence, the society assigns a greater reward so that they are filled competently. They are filled competently. Right? Criticism. According to Melvin Cumin, ये तो एग्जाम्पल था. Actually, this was the example that he took from American society. Okay, वहाँ पे फायर फाइटिंग की जॉब बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट मानी जाती है and they are very highly rewarded, highly paid and very much respected if you are working in fire fighting department. Okay, that's a very talented group of people and highly trained and very muscular, means बहुत ही ज़्यादा desired job है वहाँ पे. And so that's why he took it in that case. He compared it with firefighting versus vendors, grocery vendors. So he says that grocery vending do not require any kind of skill and that's why not much respected a job. Okay. Criticism. According to Melvin Cumin, this hypothesis does not explain inequality due to race or gender. Not all the jobs that are functionally important requires high skill or are highly paid. Next, not all the highly paid jobs are functionally important. Next point, Cumin believed that social stratification इतनी खांसी सबको क्यों लगी हुई है? Social stratification is dysfunctional. Functional की जगह dysfunctional है. As it prevents qualified people from all the walks of life to achieve their aspirations. The underprivileged youth has less chance of becoming a scientist, no matter how smart he is. Next theory is Marxist theory of stratification. So here, as we have read it multiple times, इसका बस एक single सा फंडा है, that is stratification will depend upon the ownership of means of production. And in that case, in means of production, there will be two classes, the polarized classes, that is bourgeoisies and proletariats. Okay, so bourgeoisies or the capitalist class, they will be owning the means of production, and the labor class, that will own nothing but their own labor. That's it. So this will lead to polarization, or the society is always divided into polarized opposite classes, the one who owns the means of production and one who works on it. Okay. In fact, there are certain Marxist scholars who even categorize or who even try to understand Indian caste system through Marxist perspective. That is two classes, the one who own the land, okay, the owners of the land, and the second one who basically work on the land, the labor class, the peasant or the manual laborers and owners of the land. And यहाँ पे जो feudal structure that is created resembles the capitalist system of the industrial societies. So हम लोग जब पेपर 2 पढ़ेंगे तो I'll be talking about certain Marxist scholar like A.R. Desai is there. Then अभी बहुत recent scholar is there, Ashok Rudra. So his articles are there in Indian Express आते रहते हैं. So he is a Marxist scholar and he tries to understand the Indian ecosystem also with respect to the Marxist perspective, wherein the owners of the land and then the workers on the land. So Marx suggested that this capitalist system has created a kind of false consciousness, and due to this false consciousness, the labor class is not able to realize that they are being exploited. But one day, this false consciousness will go. The true consciousness will come, and the labor class will unite, and there will be a revolution. So this को लाल सलाम कहते हैं या क्रांति. Okay, so that revolution will come, and this will lead to first. So he explains the stages. So in the ancient stage, first it begins with primitive communism, wherein he says that there cannot be slaves, there cannot be any kind of hierarchy because there was no surplus. So any slave or any servant would just be an extra mouth to feed. क्योंकि surplus है नहीं तो उसको खिलाना पड़ेगा, कहाँ से लाएंगे? So that's why there was no hierarchy. And that when the surplus came, the first kind of hierarchy that came in the ancient society was master slave, the polarization. Then in the feudalism, feudal lord and the tenant, and then industrial society, the capitalist and the labor class, or the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. But after industrialization, he says that there will be a revolution. The true consciousness will rise, and the labor class will overthrow the capitalist class. Okay, क्रांति आएगी. and that would replace the capitalist system with first socialism, in which there will be equal distribution of resources first, but dictatorship. Socialism में dictatorship आएगी, and then next stage will be communism, where there will be equal distribution of resources and no state at all. State की जरूरत ही नहीं होगी. Okay, why state की जरूरत नहीं? Because everybody is equal and everybody gets as per his needs, his or her needs. So there will not be any kind of stratification. So everybody gets as per his needs, and state की कोई जरूरत ही नहीं है. Because inequality नहीं है, तो there will not be any kind of crime. Okay, so this is what Marx suggested, that communism will come due to revolution, due to rise of true consciousness. Now, do you agree with this idea? हाँ? अरे हाँ ना, कुछ तो बोलो यार. Or you are in a state of aporia. See, there are scholars who believe that revolution should come, but then there are scholars who believe that never ever such kind of revolution will come, because these Marx actually is somewhat right with respect to polarization of classes, but revolution never will come. Why? Because society is changing not as per the expectation of Marx. So there is a scholar named as Derendorf who criticized the idea of Marx, saying that Marx ने expect किया था society will be moving or expanding in a pyramidal form, wherein the lower base of the pyramid will be increasing, that is the lower class बढ़ता जाएगा, और upper class will become less and less, means more concentration of wealth will happen. And आप लोग जब Oxfam index वगैरह के बारे में पढ़ते होंगे, you must have, so inequality in distribution of wealth, that is approximately 1% of the world's riches, they control approximately 50% of the total wealth. India में also it was found that 50% of the total income of COVID year was earned by, I don't remember the exact percent, no 10% तो बहुत ज़्यादा हो जाएगा, I believe it was 1% or something like that. So this check means this is the Oxfam status, wherein it suggested that concentration of wealth will increase with time. Marx ने भी ये चीज को expect किया था, that concentration will increase and the base of the pyramid will be increasing, जहाँ पे lower class or the labor class will or the deprived class will be there. But actually what is happening right now is not the growth of the population in a pyramidal form, but a diamond shape. Now the diamond shape means there is a rise of middle class. It is growing disproportionately as compared to both upper class and lower class. Okay, and this middle class will never let revolution, मतलब जब proletariat की position या numbers बढ़ ही नहीं रहे, तो how can this revolution can happen? He expected ऐसी growth होनी चाहिए population की, wherein the upper class will become less and less and lower class का जो base है that will increase. But what actually is happening? Both the upper and lower class, they are decreasing in numbers. Concentration of wealth definitely is happening, but rise of middle class, and that will diffuse any probability of revolution. Now he says that upper class will decompose, or the capitalist will decompose. इसका मतलब क्या है? So if you see, even being a labor, आप लोग अगर मान लो कोई भी लेबर है किसी भी फैक्ट्री में, that particular person has a bank account. अब उस बैंक में जो पैसा पड़ा है, definitely the bank will be earning that earning money or by giving the loans to certain industrialists who will be paying them interest, and that interest the bank will take some of it as a profit, and rest of the interest will be given to the one who has put their money in banks, or the banks will also use this money to invest in stock market, mutual funds. So ultimately वो किसका पैसा है? Labor class का पैसा है, and that money has been invested into some stock markets of the company or stocks of the company which he might be getting exploited from, isn't it? अब उसके पैसे, और या फिर वो labor has himself bought some kind of mutual fund or has also invested in share markets, or some other ways he is directly indirectly, means अब मेरे पास, even if I have one share of say Reliance, so in whatever percentage, that minute percentage, I am owner of Reliance or not, that means the labor class, or sorry, the upper class has decomposed. Even the labor class now has or owns some shares of the company, तो वो किसके खिलाफ revolt करेगा? If I have invested something in a company, how will I go and revolt against him? मैं उसी कंपनी में exploit करी, पर मैंने उसी के shares खरीदे, because I know that उसका profit बन रहा है. Why would I go and revolt? Okay, so the labor class, sorry, upper class will decompose. The next one, he says labor class will also decompose. Okay, let's take it this way, that there are several hierarchies in a corporate group. That is, labor class है, उससे ऊपर supervisor, उससे ऊपर floor manager, then senior manager or general manager, then director, then some other post, and then CEO or maybe president, vice president and CEO. अब इसमें से labor class कौन है और upper class कौन है और capitalist कौन है? If you see from his point of view, this person just above him is the bourgeois. Okay, he is the one who is being exploited. If you see from this person's point of view, the person just above him is the bourgeois, the capitalist class, and he is the labor. उसका boss उसको exploit कर रहा है. So due to this, the labor class itself has decomposed. So in that case, it's very difficult to unite the labor class. अब इसको लग रहा है कि ये इसको exploit कर रहा है, and this person is feeling the person above him is exploiting him. So who actually, or how this labor class will actually unite against the bourgeois or the capitalist class? मुकेश अंबानी तो किसी से मिल भी नहीं रहा है. So nobody has the feeling that he is exploiting everyone. So you see, sometimes you buy some product, and in that case, you are not very much satisfied with the product. Okay, you go to that company's office, you fight with that receptionist. Okay, but उस receptionist के पास भी कोई authority नहीं है. He is just another labor who has no authority to take any decision. Rather, just specify you or maybe argue with you or listen to your argument. That's it. Maximum. आप उसको सुना दो जितना मर्जी, पर वो क्या करे? उसके पास उसके beyond authority नहीं है. But you feel you are very much angry on that person as if you are talking to the owner of the that company. But that particular person is just a labor. So labor is fighting with the labor, or the labor class itself has decomposed. So अभी upper class भी कौन है पता नहीं, और labor class कौन है वो भी नहीं पता. So due to which, how the true consciousness is going to happen, or true consciousness or unity will come due to this. So this is something, and also Derendorf says that Marx actually forgot the basic nature of human. The moment labor class gets the power, he will act as a bourgeois. जैसे ही उसके पास पावर आएगा, वो ऑटोमेटिकली bourgeois की तरह एक्ट करेगा. This is what happened in USSR. Lenin, Stalin. The moment they got the power, everything with the ideology of communism and all that washed away. China is the good example. Communist Party of China. कहीं से भी कम्युनिस्ट नहीं है वो. Okay. पूरा capitalism with dictatorship. So this is the basic human nature. The moment somebody gets the power, लेबर के पास जब पावर आएगा तो वो खुद बुर्जुआ बन जाएगा. He will never act. He is no more a proletariat. Okay. So everybody wants to rise in the hierarchy. Okay. But without disrupting the hierarchy. आप ये समझो, this is the human nature. You want to rise in the hierarchy, or you dislike hierarchy only with respect to your position in the hierarchy. That means आप hierarchy को dislike करते हो, that you want to rise, but इसका मतलब ये नहीं कि आप egalitarian society करते हो. You just want to rise in the hierarchy so that you can enjoy the prestige and privilege of upper echelons, isn't it? So you will be like, when you will be working in administration, so you will say that कितना bossy है वो हमारा जो commissioner है और assistant commissioner है, और उसको कितना attitude है. Yes, you will say this, but you will, the moment you become commissioner, assistant commissioner, automatically your juniors or subordinates are going to say the same thing. Okay, आप वहां पे hierarchy को criticize कर रहे हो, but only with respect to you. You want to disrupt the hierarchy, but just changing your position instead of completely abolishing the hierarchy. So you want change in the structure rather than change of the structure. आप उस structure को अभी भी maintain रखोगे, but अपनी position को alter कर दोगे वहां. Okay, so this is the reason that revolution will never happen. Max Weber also says the same thing, that as the society progresses, there will be multiple layers, and there will not be polarization of the society into capitalist and proletariat. There will be a lot of layers due to bureaucratization, due to rise of bureaucratic setup. Okay, so let's write this Marxist class, Marxist idea of stratification. For Karl Marx, stratification is based on different relations to means of production. Different relations to means of production. One class controls the means of production. One class controls the means of production, which allows them to extract labor, from other class, which controls only their own labor, The capitalist class system has created a false consciousness. The capitalist class system has created a false consciousness that prevents any revolution, or help maintain the social structure, But one day, as the situation gets worse, the proletariat class will unite. As the situation gets worse, the proletariat class unites and will overthrow the capitalist class. Criticism. According to Derendorf, revolution is impossible as first capitalist class will decompose. ठीक है, in bracket you can write सभी capitalists बन जाएंगे just by investment. You can write in your own language. Everybody will become a capitalist one day. Second, the labor class will decompose. Okay, in bracket you can write fragmentation of labor. Third, middle class will emerge and will prevent polarization. Next, rise of welfare state. That is high tax करेंगे rich को, and that money will be used for welfare of the poor. So rise of welfare state. And last, high social mobility in future. And that is very much present right now. That is एक MBA चाय वाला, तो वो चाय की टपरी खोलता है and then turns it into a $1 billion venture, और एक OYO, and these kind of startups that are rising from scratch and rising into a multi-million-dollar venture or maybe a multi-billion-dollar venture within few years by Jews, an academy. And these kind of startups, and the best example, one of the richest person in the world is just one of the youngest richest person in the world, Mark Zuckerberg. Okay, एक code and he became one of the richest person. ठीक है, एक हॉस्टल में रिफ्ट एंड एक अपनी हॉस्टल की डॉर्मेटरी में कोडिंग एंड इवेंचुअली rise of Facebook, and within 10-15 years of his effort he is one of the richest person in the world. So this social mobility will be greater in the future as new avenues and opportunities will rise. In fact, bitcoins, cryptocurrencies, they have created new billionaires in the world. अब नई टाइप की टेक्नोलॉजी आ रही है, that is NFT, non fungible tokens. तो एक छोटा सा अपना ट्वीट को नॉन फंजिबल टोकन में कुछ $1 million में बेच दिया. Okay, something like this. So new avenues for social mobilities are rising, and that's why there is a lot of other opportunities. So that's why the labor class will never unite against the capitalist class. Okay, this last statement, according to Max Weber, Inequality will increase in the future as more capitalism will lead to more bureaucratic setup. As more capitalism will lead to more bureaucratic setup. However, the revolution seems to be an impossible phenomena, as there will not be any polarization. ठीक है, तो shall we continue Max Weber के साथ? That's it for today. Thank you.